About that time, I went to the doctor for my annual physical. He tells me, he says, Rick, you've got diabetes. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no way I've got diabetes. Now, my mom had lots of blood pressure problems. Family had all had a lot of diabetes. I wasn't worrying about losing weight. I was worried about the diabetes because I didn't want to start losing toes and losing body parts and then dying from it because I'd seen it take my aunt. She calls me up one day and says, Rick, I can't live this way no longer. I'm going to have all the cake and ice cream I can have on such and such a day, come down and have a party, and then I'm going to die. And that's what she did. And I was devastated from that. And I remembered that real well. So here I am sitting in the doctor's office. What can I do? And he says, well, I'll give you 3 months. But if you can't fix it in 3 months, we're going to have to do something. Talked to my son on the way home, found out what he was doing, came home, cleaned out all the stuff that I shouldn't eat, started eating stuff that I should eat.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. We have today with us Rick. Is going to share his story with us. Rick, how are you this morning?
I'm just one of a few Ricks around here, I hear.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. Yeah, we got quite a few. It's good to have you. Rick, where are you located?
I am in Ohio, kind of west central Ohio, pretty close to the Ohio border, about 35, 40 minutes from Ohio border with Indiana.
Oh, with Indiana. Okay, gotcha. I grew up in Indiana when I was a kid, or at least I lived there for about, 6 or 7 years anyway. So anyway, well, welcome. Well, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I guess I'm pretty typical as a U.S. person. I was born and raised in Ohio. Well, I was born in Kentucky, but I was raised in this area. Had the classic background of meat and potatoes as a kid. My mom was a great cook. She was an amazing cook, but she kept us full of meat and potatoes. And in a lot of sweets. My dad and I were both grew up with sweets in the house all the time. Dad always had a candy jar somewhere in the house. My mission was to find it. And I did that quite successfully many times over the years. Even after he retired, I would go back home and find that candy jar, and there would always be some kind of chocolate in that thing. So I had a real problem as a chocoholic and loved to eat sugar and sweets and chocolate. The amazing thing was I was always the real thin guy. My brother always wore the Huskies and I always wore the Slims. He was 2 years younger than me, but I always stayed extremely thin. I think when I was a sophomore in high school, I was 5'3", 5'4", lucky if I was all wet, 100 pounds. Graduated from high school at 6'4", and still only 165 pounds. So I was always really thin. I could eat anything I wanted, could never gain a pound. And I remember when I started lifting weights when I was in high school, trying to gain weight. And, I watched, that was about the time, the hot thing to do was to drink a few eggs, raw eggs, just to see if you could gain weight. And I was putting down the raw eggs and everything I could, but never could gain a pound. I stayed 165 pounds for many, many years in that range, even after I got married at 21. But I could eat anything I wanted. And I thought I was always going to be that way. That didn't hold true. It caught up with me over time. I remember I worked in the food equipment industry. So my job was to develop equipment to be used by fast food restaurants and other such joints. And I worked in the technology, what we called our Skunk Works division. And we were always working on some real far-fetched ideas for ways to cook food. And I managed that job to gain about 100 pounds in a year. And that came suddenly and fast and furious. And I couldn't believe how heavy I got. And by the time it was all over with, I was up to 280. And that was probably about 30 years old when that happened, 30, 35. I don't remember exactly, but I got really, really heavy and very uncomfortable. And at the time, I didn't think a lot of it. The doctors always said, I needed to be careful. How it is when you go to the doctor to get your physical or whatever. Just give you a little bit of warning. Hey, you need to watch your weight a little bit. The funny thing was, I still remember the blood tests. The blood tests were pretty good. My LDLs were good. My HDLs were really, really low. Anything my doctor always complained about, he was complaining about my HDL being too low. It was always like 20 or 18, 21. My vitamin D levels were really, really low. I remember that. But I was just a very heavy guy at the time. And when I look back and see those pictures, it's pretty amazing. Back about 2000 or so, 2001, I decided I had quit lifting weights. I started lifting weights again in about 1995 after my father-in-law had a heart attack and died. And then about 2001, 2002, a friend of mine that I was lifting with, my training partner, decided he was going to compete in a local show, bodybuilding. So I was eating his diet, eating 6 to 8 times a day, lots and lots of carbs, very low fat. And I got down to, under 10% body fat, got really lean, lost all that weight, looked pretty good, and stayed that way for about a year. Then I started working on an MBA, and all the weight came back during those MBA years. You go to college, you do that, you're working full time, plus you're doing an MBA full time, which is what it felt like. And the only thing you're thinking about is survival. And I gained all that weight back that I'd lost, and that stuck with me for a while. And that lasted until about 2015 when I had my first wake up call. Now, this time I was in my 50s, probably about what your age is now. And I found myself on a July morning. I went to the gym. I remember going to the gym. I was still 260, 270 probably at that time. I didn't feel real good. And I noticed as I was getting ready to leave the gym, things looked a little blurry. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I came home. Didn't feel real good. Told my wife I wasn't feeling really good, but I was going to go to work. So I went to work, and I was supposed to do a presentation. I got up and started the presentation. I had to stop because I was feeling really lightheaded. And my wife came to work, the office. I worked about an hour away from home. She came and got me, and we went straight to the hospital. My blood pressure was 250 plus over 190. And I'm lucky I'm alive from that. I should have died probably that day. And, they took me straight, I didn't think much about it. It didn't feel so bad. I felt pretty good, actually. And they immediately started all the stuff that, you do for high blood pressure at the hospital. And I ended up staying there overnight. It took a full 24 hours to get my blood pressure under control. It stayed right at the 200 mark for hours, 200 over 120 or so. And it took a long, long, long time to get it to come down. So after it came down, then, I stayed, I think I was at the hospital one night, and they sent me home. The next day I had an appointment with a doctor and neurologist, and he put me on a statin and 2 blood pressure medicines right away. And, I didn't think a lot about it. This was probably, I wish I had listened to this particular doctor, because he's probably the only doctor I ever had that really understood metabolism. I mean, he talked to me about what kinds of foods I was eating. This was a long time ago. I don't think he's even in business anymore. But he talked to me about the kinds of foods I should be eating. It was very much like I think today, but it wasn't a time when I was quite there yet. So I tried to adopt some of his ideas for a little while. I lost about 20 pounds, and then I put it all right back on. Then about 3 years later, when I was 59, my father came down with brain cancer, which he didn't survive long. He only lived, after he was diagnosed, he only lived like 3 or 4 months, and he passed away. And right after he passed away, I showed up with prostate cancer. And there's nothing more humbling in life than a doctor sitting down and telling you. Now, keep in mind, the doctor wasn't the doctor that I saw that diagnosed the tumor. He didn't have real good bedside manners. He just sat my wife and I down. He looked at us. This is after a biopsy. He looks at me and he says, "Well, Rick, you're probably not going to be here in 6 months." Now, prostate cancer typically doesn't take somebody that fast. I've had 2 uncles that had prostate cancer, so it did run in the family. And when I did my DNA, believe it or not, in my DNA, it shows that I have a high likelihood of having prostate cancer, which is really wild. And he just was very, very direct with me. I never went back to that doctor. I went over to Ohio State and found a surgeon there, and immediately had a radical prostatectomy. And within 6 months, on my 60th birthday, in fact, they took my prostate, and which probably saved my life. I had a very aggressive cancer. I don't know how much you know about Gleason scores, but that tells you how aggressive it is. Mine was like an 8.8, 8.7, which is very, very aggressive. It wasn't large. It was very small, and it was all intact, but it was very aggressive. It was growing really, really fast. I credit that to my diet. I ate a lot of junk, a lot of carbs. I wasn't eating healthy at all. And that probably was a factor in my cancer. So that happened. Shortly after that, a lot of other things started happening. Now, here I am, I'm 60 years old. I decided immediately I was going to retire because I knew the stress was going to kill me if nothing else, because my job was very high stress. I was running business units. I was in a very high stress spot, what I did in the business I was running. So I decided to retire and did all the work to retire. And then the next thing I know, just weird stuff happened. I all of a sudden become lactose intolerant. Now, keep in mind, I drank a lot of milk before that. Milk was something I just really loved. I drank a lot of it, didn't think anything of it. A lot of protein shakes because I still love to work out and I still love to drink protein shakes. So I would make them every day. And so there was always milk in there. But all of a sudden, man, milk just made me sick as a dog. It didn't take hardly any quantities at all. And I would just get absolutely blasted. It was terrible. And so I became lactose intolerant. It took forever to figure that out. And then I show up a few days after that, or a few weeks after that, I show up with gout. I had never had a problem with gout. My dad had gout, but I never dreamed I would have gout. I thought my big toe was coming off or something. It was the worst pain I'd had in a long time. So I ended up with gout. That gout probably hurt more than the prostate surgery, by the way. So the gout happened, and then just lots of weird stuff. I began to really all of a sudden come to a realization that my mortality was probably not going to be long if things didn't turn around, because everything was going wrong. And when I was younger, I always thought I'll live to be quite old, because a lot of my dad's family lived to be old. But I was beginning to think I was going to be more like my mom's side of the family, which all tended to die in their 60s and 70s. And became quite depressing. About that time, I went to the doctor for my annual physical, and he did my blood test, and he tells me, he says, "Rick, you've got diabetes." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? There's no way I've got diabetes." Now, my mom had lots of blood pressure problems, and her family, not her, but her family had all had a lot of diabetes and died young. I said they died in their youngers because of diabetes and because of blood pressure. So it was beginning to look more and more like I was going to be in that same situation. And he tells me my A1C was 6.5. And he says, "I'm going to have to do something here. We got to have to put you on some meds or something." And I pretty much begged him to give me a little bit of time to see if I could fix it. My second son, I had 4 boys. My wife and I had 4 sons. My second son had about 330 pounds, had gone on a diet, mostly a non-processed food diet, and had lost like 130 pounds. And I was really impressed with what he had done. I figured, I'll just call Ben, find out how he did it, and I'll do that. And surely I can get my diabetes under control. I wasn't worrying about losing weight. I was worried about the diabetes, because I didn't want to start losing toes and losing body parts and then dying from it, because I'd seen it take my aunt. My aunt, she was on dialysis, and she calls me up one day and says, "Rick, I can't live this way no longer. I'm going to have all the cake and ice cream I can have on such and such a day, come down and have a party, and then I'm going to die." And that's what she did. That's the way she treated it. She was only in her 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And I was devastated from that. And I remembered that real well. So here I am sitting in the doctor's office, and I'm like, "What can I do?" And he says, "Well, I'll give you 3 months. But if you can't fix it in 3 months, we're going to have to do something." So I went home, talked to my son on the way home, found out what he was doing, came home, cleaned out all the stuff that I shouldn't eat, started eating stuff that I should eat, which basically was, without me realizing what I was doing, I basically went gluten-free, sugar-free, a little bit more fats, and I didn't have a name for it. I just knew that's what I was going to do. And that's where I started. And within 3 or 4 days, all my joint pains had gone. I had a lot of joint pain at that point too. My knees were killing me all the time. But just in a matter of days, just from getting rid of the gluten and the sugar and eating a little healthier, just a little bit changed my knees and my joints significantly. There was still pain, but it was so much better just from a little bit of that. Over the next few weeks, without even realizing it, I basically went keto, and then I figured it out. I started figuring out all the pieces. So I went very hard, strict keto, well under 20 grams. And I never really liked vegetables anyway. So it didn't take very long before all of a sudden the vegetables started disappearing from my diet. And that kept going for a while. I did that for 9 months approximately, but I, over that time, just ate less and less vegetables, more and more eggs, and more meat. That I think about that time, about that 9-month mark, 8-month mark or so was when I heard the first time I'd heard about the carnivore diet. And I think that January you did one of your carnivore challenges, and I did that month. And that was the first time I officially said, hey, I'm a carnivore. And I did that. And, things got even better. I was amazed how much better they got. In total, I lost 85 pounds. I went from when I started, I was around the 265 range or so, 260, 265. I don't remember the exact number, but I got down in the 170s, which for me was way too thin. But I was eating OMAD at the time. I did a lot of OMAD and I didn't do a lot of long fasting, but I did a lot of OMAD. But I wasn't getting enough food. I mean, I could not eat that much food in one meal to really keep my weight stable. So finally, at about 170 pounds, I was getting cold all the time. I was freezing. And I told my wife that I had to start eating more food because my metabolism was just dying. So I went to 4 meals a day, right? I mean, over time, I upped it to 3 to 4 meals a day. And I do better with slightly smaller meals. I can't process that much food. And I'm back up to 180, 183, 184, feeling incredible. My body fat runs around 10%, which I don't even have to try to stay lean. If I just eat my regular foods, my meat, and stay away from the junk, which I don't have a problem with. I have no desire to eat junk anymore. I used to. I couldn't be in a room with chocolate without swallowing it whole, but there's just no desire anymore. I can be around chocolate, all that kind of junk, and I just don't have any desire. We go to my kid's house. My daughter-in-law, she loves to cook keto treats. She just cooks these things like crazy, and I'll grab one once in a while when I'm there, but I just don't have the desire. It's pretty wild what's happened and the change in my taste and how I like what I eat and what I like to eat. But now today, I'm clear from cancer. I've been 6 years almost. It'll be 6 years this November on my birthday. Cancer-free. And then I've been all this time, my weight's been pretty stable for the last 3 years plus of more than carnivore. And that's kind of my story. It's been quite a turnaround. I feel incredible. I feel young again. I don't feel old. I tell my kids I don't feel 65. I'm deadlifting almost to hit 400 pounds on my trap bar deadlift finally. I'm getting close. I'm working on it really hard. I haven't put rack pulls back in, by the way. I'm thinking about putting them back in. I've done them before, and I need to do them again because I've got to do something to keep this deadlift moving. Because I'm up about 365 right now, and multiple. That's for reps. That's not for one. But I just got to do some extra work there. I love to lift 6 days a week. Guys in the gym think I'm a nut, but I just enjoy it.
Well, it's quite a story for sure. Thanks for sharing that, Rick. So just a couple things. So you start out meat and potatoes, but then, chocolate and sweets, which is so easy to do, particularly if it's available. I mean, kids are always going to gravitate towards that stuff if it's there. I'm curious because you said you got down to 10% body fat at a time eating a high carb diet, and you were able to do that. Why weren't you able to do that again? I mean, because it's something like some people say, well, you can lose weight anyway, but why do you think it didn't stay, or why do you think you didn't pursue that route a second time?
I can explain that. I think I think I could have done it again. There's no question in my mind I could have done it again, but that is really, really hard. I mean, it's maybe for some people it's not hard, but that constant hunger, that drive to eat. When you're eating carbs, you eat a meal and 2 hours later, you're just starving for more. You can never get enough. And so I was always hungry. And even that time when I did do it, I had to do so much activity just to keep pace with the amount of food that I was driven to eat by my hunger. And, I just couldn't never get full. And I wasn't trying to be full. I was trying to lose weight. But when you're in that mode of thinking and your mind is about those carbs, I mean, if I didn't eat every 2 to 3 hours, my head would hurt. I'd get these splitting headaches. I passed out a couple of times. I just got so lightheaded and hypoglycemic that I just fell over. And it's just hard. I would never want to do that again. It was successful, but I wouldn't call it successful. It was very, very difficult. And I didn't feel good. When I got down, even in those body fat ranges, I felt terrible. I really felt bad. I don't feel bad now. I feel really good, in fact. But back then, when I was hanging down under 10, when I get down, I don't know what I really got down to because nobody could give an accurate measurement, but I didn't feel good. I felt terrible.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, if it, like I said, you can just white knuckle it through and starve yourself and not eat, and you can only do that for so long, but it's certainly not sustainable over the long term. So it's interesting to contrast because now you're in, I mean, I assume now how, I mean, because you're obviously leaner now and you're back in the gym and you've lost all that body weight. And this time around, how does it differ for you with regard to hunger and things like that?
Well, I don't have the hunger. That's the first thing. It's very different. I could eat once a day and be very satisfied. In fact, I find that I know I need to eat. I know I need to get up in that 3,000 plus calorie area just to keep my weight stable. If I eat less than that, if I try to eat once a day, which I could do, there's days I just don't feel hungry. I could go a long time without eating because I'm just not hungry sometimes. But you know, it's amazing the difference. There's just not that drive and want to eat. I just feel satisfied all the time, and it's quite a difference, a very big difference. And I don't get the headaches. I mean, going without eating is just not a big deal because I just don't get the headaches. I don't have that stomach churn. That's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple things in your story that stuck out to me. One, you said, obviously you had surgery for your prostate cancer and you had the prostate removed. And you said the gout was worse than surgery for prostate cancer, which, for people that haven't had gout, just to put how painful that can be. And a lot of people would, there's a lot of people that still ask me today, hey, what about gout and eating a lot of meat? Isn't it going to drive me to have gout? And what I have seen is that when people become metabolically healthy, the gout seems not to be an issue, despite the fact that you're eating more red meat and more quote unquote purine-rich foods. But have you had any issues with gout since going meat-based?
No, for a little while I had some toe pain, some joint, a little bit of leftover damage, probably from the high sugar, and neuropathy and things like that in the feet and the ankles. That went away for the most part. Every so often I'll still get a little bit of neuropathy type feeling here and there. But for the most part, 99% of the time it's gone. And the gout stuff all went away, which is really funny because, I got that same story. People tell me I was not going to be able to eat all this meat. I eat a lot of sardines. There's no way you can do this. My dad had to stop eating sardines because of gout. And he had so much problem with gout. And, he changed his diet dramatically just to avoid the gout. And my gout went away, but it didn't go away because of that. It went away because I got rid of all the other junk, the carbs and the stuff like that. And the doctor was kind of amazed. My uric acid levels are really low nowadays. I check them every so often just because I'm curious. They went from 13 or whatever the number was down to now they're 5.6 or something. And I'm eating meat and sardines and I'm just all that stuff.
Yeah, I've actually had the advantage of having a home uric acid monitor, and I checked them several times. Mine's always around 4 to 5. I mean, something like that. So
yeah.
well within normal range. And I eat, I calculate that I eat, if the average American eats about 50, and this is true, the average American eats about 56 pounds of red meat a year, beef, and I eat closer to 1,000 pounds, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I literally eat about 1,000 pounds of red meat a year, and don't even have any signs of gout at all. And my uric acid level is typically normal. So it's interesting to see. So along this, you'd mentioned there was one doctor you said that gave you some decent advice regarding nutrition.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of, obviously with the blood pressure crisis, with the prostate surgery. How often did you get advice about diet during this whole health journey from health professionals?
The only doctor or anybody that ever tried as far as professional help was that particular specialist. He was a neurologist. He was the only guy that ever did. My doctor, he would give me this sheet of paper. You probably a lot of people here have had that. You go in the doctor's office, he says you probably need to lose a little weight, and it gives you a piece of paper that tells you how to eat the Mediterranean diet. That was the number one thing I got. I got that probably 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. They would give you the Mediterranean diet for anything that was going wrong. And so, I learned to ignore the doctor. He's the same doctor that told me I shouldn't be squatting anymore. So, I learned where to find advice.
Let me ask you, the Mediterranean diet. So did you ever try it? I mean, because, fair enough.
No.
Did you never even try the Mediterranean diet? Because some people say, well, if you could have gotten all the results with a Mediterranean diet or a balanced diet or something like that. Was that, because you obviously use carbohydrates to lose weight before, but, why do you think, for so many years, because you said you grew up with a kid, you couldn't gain weight. And then what do you think changed? Was there something that changed in you to allow you to gain all that weight and stay kind of obese for so many years?
I think that my metabolism, I was always very active. I wasn't involved in athletics in high school, but I was very active. I worked a lot. I was always out doing something. When I was a kid, we were always out on our bikes. We were always this, that, and the other. And then when I got out of school, I played a lot of basketball in various leagues. So I was always playing basketball, winter, summer, whenever. I was always out physically very, very active. There was a time there when I started driving a lot further distance to work. My kids were becoming active and I was spending more time watching the kids. Then I started doing a lot of night school and to get some extra college classes in. And I was just sitting on my butt more than I was moving. And I think literally my metabolism just caught up with me. I think I just stopped being physically active enough to burn all the calories. And I kept eating the same way as I was always eating. And maybe even more junk. I think the amount of percentage of junk to good nutritious food I was eating was increasing. And the metabolism, I was slowing down in terms of my output. And I think it just caught up with me. I think that's all that happened. I just got fat. That's flat out. I see the pictures. It's embarrassing how heavy I got. I was wearing 44-inch inseam pants. My jackets, I wore a lot of suits, so my jackets were all huge. I can't wear any of those things anymore. They're all gone. I gave most of them away. I was just big. Now I wear a 32-inch inseam. And I've been there for a long time. So to go from a 44 to a 32 is a big change. And I don't ever want to go back to that. Now I do it without even trying. I mean, I've been in a 32-inch inseam for 4 years, and that's effortless. And there's no effort to do it now. Back then, I couldn't even figure out how to do it consistently and keep it there.
Yeah, I think you mean waist rather than inseam, because inseam is the length of your waist.
Waist. Yeah, my waist. I was not. My inseam hasn't changed that much. I did get shorter, by the way. I was 6'4" when I graduated from high school, I swear. And today I'm 6'2", they tell me. So I don't know where that 2 inches went, but I lost 2 inches there, and then I lost all the rest was around the waist.
Yeah, sometimes we'll lose a little of that in our spine. Our discs will desiccate and dry out, and we'll lose some of
my poor spine
juice. It could be from the years of being overweight. Now, interestingly, you'd mentioned you have this, you're kind of pushing the deadlift, and certainly I've been doing my share. I've been deadlifting for almost 40 years now. And I think it's a wonderful, great exercise. I mean, yeah, like anything, you have to do it correctly, but it is something that I had somebody ask me, why do I still want to lift heavy at my age? And I'm like, why wouldn't I want to do that at my age? It doesn't, it's one of those things where, if it's good for you when you're young, why wouldn't it be good for you when you're old? And there's people that say, well, you're too old to do that. And I'm like, I don't think I am. I beg to disagree. I think the ability that I can still do this says something about how I'm aging. So as far as, obviously you've been doing this kind of meat-based thing for a while now. Are people around you going, you're going to die, you're going to get, heart attack? How is it being received among those around you?
You get those comments, right? I was at the dentist about a month and a half ago, and it was a new dentist because we just turned 65. We had to change insurance. We had to change long story. But I sat down in the chair and they were looking at my teeth, telling me they looked pretty good. And something came up, and somewhere I said, all I eat is meat. And she says, oh man, you're going to die from this. That's going to raise your cholesterol. And I looked at her and I laughed, literally laughed. And I said, well, I don't think so. But, and she never said another word about it. I just told her I was going to be around for a long time. So I hope she was going to be around too. And that was the end of the discussion. But I get that. There are people at the gym. I'm retired now, so I don't see as many people as I used to see. But when I see people and it comes up in various settings, I get comments about, that's insane, that's crazy. But what are they going to say? It's just that we had a discussion. I was talking to a guy yesterday. He weighs about 320, I'm guessing. Big guy, young guy. He lost his father and his brother to COVID last year. And so he's trying to lose some of that weight. And I introduced him to COVID. I introduced him to Carnivore yesterday. told him all about it, told him where to find stuff to watch, told him about the channel here to look for videos, success videos. And he told me he was going to go home and check it out. So I hope he does, because he needs it. He needs to get control of his body. So I spread the word when I can, when I'm asked, but people do think I'm a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just, I'm on certain different social medias, and I'm on Twitter a lot, and I have probably a half dozen guys that are following me. They're all doing carnivore, and they all were like 400, 500, 600 pounds, and they're all losing hundreds of pounds. I mean, it's just quite. I saw one guy today, he was 630 pounds, and now he's down to 300 and something. So he's lost, well over 200 pounds. Doing carnivore. So, I mean, it certainly seems to work with appetite suppression. There's a drug out there, or a class of drugs, these GLP-1 receptor agonists, that they're designed to inhibit appetite. But I mean, I think the carnivore diet does basically the same thing without the side effects. And we're seeing that with the appetite suppression. Like you mentioned, this is maybe the first time you weren't, constantly hungry with this. How much, and you're six, you said you're six, well, you were 6'4", now you're 6'2". What do you weigh, and how much do you eat on a daily basis?
I weighed, this morning I was 183.
Okay.
And 6'2", and I eat roughly 2.5 to 3 pounds of some kind of beef. I eat mostly bison. There's a bison ranch just outside of town, so I eat a lot of bison, a lot of beef. I do eat salmon, sardines, a little bit of liver, and a little bit of oysters. But that's the most of my diet. I don't eat chicken at all. Can't stand the stuff. My wife loves chicken. Salmon. I eat a lot of salmon a couple times a week. But that's kind of my diet. So, and I eat a ton of eggs. We have another farm nearby where we buy our eggs from, and between my wife and I, we eat about 8 dozen a week. I eat 7 of those, and she eats 1. So I get about 7 dozen of eggs a week.
So about a dozen eggs a day, huh? So plus
about a dozen eggs a day,
and then
plus the meat,
plus 2.5 pounds of meat. So that's a decent amount. Yeah. So you're putting down, probably well over 3,000 calories a day, and staying lean and healthy and happy, huh?
Yeah, it takes that just to keep up my body weight. If I slow that down, I will start losing weight fast. I have to eat that to keep my weight.
So you're kind of like back to
muscle.
You're kind of like back when you were a kid again,
That's what I feel like. Sometimes I joke that I tell my sons that I'm as young as they are. I always tell them it's my 21st birthday every birthday I have, because I feel like that lately.
I mean, I know you were kind of joking around, but I mean, it has to feel good to feel like, some of the burdens of age have been lifted from you, because a lot of us, as we get older, I mean, it just doesn't feel good. I mean, you're chronically in pain, don't sleep well, whatever. I mean, all kinds of things going on. And that, I mean, is it fair to say a lot of those things went away for you?
Oh yeah. It's really, if I make a list of everything that went away, it's just kind of mind blowing. I mean, there's little things that nobody would think about. Of course, the joint pain was the biggest one. I mean, I'm lifting very aggressively. I've been lifting for years, but I really had to slow down. I couldn't deadlift. I couldn't squat. There was a lot of that stuff I had given up because it hurt too much. And I'm squatting now every week. I'm deadlifting every week. I'm doing heavy Romanian deadlifts every week. So all the joint stuff cleared up. That was the first thing that I really got excited about. Then there was all the little stuff. The lactose intolerance went away. I didn't know lactose intolerant could go away. I don't even know why I got it in the first place, but that went away. I can drink milk if I want to now. And my eyesight's improved. I mean, the last visit to the eye doctor, he says, your vision's better. He said, that's pretty cool. And I said, well, I think I can explain it. And I tried to tell him. He said, no, there's nothing you could eat that could fix this. There's nothing that you could eat that could fix your eye vision. I was like, yeah, right. And I walked out laughing after he was done. But my eyesight got better. Endurance got better. I mean, I never get sore. I lift like a madman, and I never, ever get sore. People think I'm lying. I said, I don't get sore. I just work out like a madman for an hour and a half, and I'm not sore. And I'm ready to go again the next day. And call it good sleep, call it whatever. I feel amazing. And I can't believe at 65, you can feel this way.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's kind of funny. The optometrist says your eyesight is better, And then you tell them, hey, I changed my diet. He goes, well, that's impossible. It's like, well, it just happened right in front of your eyes and you still deny it. It's kind of comical when we see these different healthcare providers. It's still even staring it right in the front of their face. They can't believe it's happening. So
I can't wait till the next time I go to see him again. Because when I go to see him again, you better believe I'm going to remember this.
How you said your wife eats chicken. You're not a big fan of that. How does your wife feel about you eating an all meat diet?
She eats the same way I do for the most part. She tends to eat more pork and chicken than I do. The only time I ever have pork is if I have some bacon, because I do love bacon here and there. But she will have more keto foods, or if she's with the kids at their house, she'll eat something else. But she doesn't have a problem with the way I eat. She thinks I'm nuts too, the way I sleep. But I sleep. I like to get good sleep. I get a good 8 hours a night. But she doesn't have a problem with me eating a lot of meat, because she gets to eat a lot of meat too. Yesterday, I cooked for Mother's Day. I cooked a couple big ribeyes, and she got a ribeye and I got a ribeye, and they were gone. That's all I can say. We loved it.
Yeah, we had tenderloin at our house. I cooked a big old tenderloin for the house, and we all went throughh that. It was about a 6-pounder, and the 4 of us just kind of demolished it. I probably had 3 of it at least, maybe 3.5 pounds of it, but it was quite good. So, and you said you get 8 hours of sleep. Has your sleep quality improved or changed since you switched diet?
Yeah, it got much better. The sleep improved, and there's a couple things that happened there. Back about the time of the blood pressure medicine thing, I would sleep like 5-6 hours a night if I was lucky. Not because I couldn't sleep more, just because I figured I'd sleep when I was dead. I mean, I worked a lot of hours. I intentionally cut my sleep short because I had a lot of things I wanted to do in the day, and I just didn't feel I needed to sleep. And I would just sleep. I woke up to an alarm clock, and then I would get up, I'd go to the gym, then I would go to work, and then I would do whatever. And, over time, I realized the error of my thinking and started trying to sleep more, but it got better with the diet. It definitely improved with the diet. I can go to bed, I can sleep every night, and I sleep soundly. My sinuses are better. I breathe through my sinuses better than I ever slept ever in my life. And it's different. I don't know what changed there, but my sinuses are better. I don't mouth breathe anymore. Of course, I tape my mouth just in case, so I'm a mouth taper, but it's totally different.
You mentioned you had an episode of, extremely high blood pressure, well over, over 200, which is, puts you at risk for things like strokes and things like that.
Yeah.
When did were you medicated for blood pressure for a long period of time? And if so, were you able to come off it at some point?
Yeah, I didn't mention that, I guess. When I changed my diet back in 2019, the beginning of 2019, that's when the doctor told me I had the blood sugar problem, the diabetes problem. He had to start taking me off the blood pressure meds pretty fast. I mean, I was eating differently and losing weight very rapidly. And I would text him. We were in a relationship where I just text him and say, hey, I check my blood pressure every morning. I still do now after all that. That scared the crap out of me, which it should. But I would check my blood pressure, and it was dropping down, in the 95 over, I don't remember, maybe 51, 49, something like that. And I would send him a text message immediately and say, hey, my blood pressure is getting down. This is what's been the last week. I would send him a set of logs, and he would say, yeah, you better take and drop your medicine. So over a period of about 3 months, we just dropped it. And within 4 months, I was off all the blood pressure meds. The statin was a different issue. That he didn't give me the statin in the first place. My family doctor, that was the neurologist. And I went and got a CAC test, probably at about a year mark. And I got a 19. I got 3 zeros, and one of them was 19. And he looked at that. We talked for a while, and I was off the statins, and I haven't been on statins since. But I'm going to go back and get another. CAC test to see where I'm at after these years. But I'm just waiting for a little while. He's not rushing me to do that, but I really want to find out if it's what's happened over that time, because 19 isn't 0, which is really a little unnerving. But at my age, I'm pretty comfortable with only being 19.
Well, I mean, if you look at the odds of people at 65, particularly with your history of, super high blood pressure and all
Exactly.
the obesity, it's surprising. It might not even been higher, but, so you said you check your blood pressure every day now. Now you're on this meat-based diet, which is so bad for our heart. It's going to kill us. And what is your blood pressure like today with all meat?
It's good. I tend to run about 125 to 130 over, which is not ideal to some people, but I think it's pretty ideal, over about 56 to 61. So it sticks there all the time. I don't take any meds. I check it. I don't check it the best time of day. I check it after my workout, after I come home and take a shower, which is the worst time to check your blood pressure. I can tell the days I do deadlifts, by the way. My blood pressure is always a little bit higher on the days I deadlift or squat. But it's been really good. It's been real stable. He likes it where it's at. Feels really good about where I'm at with that, and never questions it. We check my blood sugar. It's been really good and stable. I tend to run 95 to 98 when he checks it. Now that's fasting, and I know there's all kinds of complications with that because I eat those big meat meals at night, but or not late, but before I go to bed. But then the only thing that's gone up a little bit is A1C, and we've talked about that on here a million times. I really believe it's because my red blood cell life is so long lasting, and I've got lots of other thoughts on that. But it seems to be stable. It's just when I first went keto, it got all the way down to 4.7, and you could see as I went stronger and stronger towards carnivore, that number slid up a little bit. So now it runs up in the 5.7 to 5.9 range. And it varies a little bit. The doctor says he's fine with that. We've talked about the logic of why, and I don't know how he really feels about it, but he always smiles at me and shakes his head yes. So we keep going.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, like I said, the blood pressure and again, is it truly red cells are living longer, or is it something else? Hard to say for sure. I mean, there are things you could do to verify that, but still, I mean, your overall how much, at 65, are you getting stronger than you were maybe a few years ago?
No question. My Romanian deadlift is not as I'm going to talk in terms of real numbers here. My Romanian deadlifts back in my 40s, I could Romanian deadlift somewhere near 300 pounds, really good, clean, multiple reps, and, scrape up my knees a little bit. But I could pull my own on really heavy Romanian deadlifts. I'm right there. I'm at that number or a little bit higher today at 65. And my deadlifts, it's been so long since the deadlift. I don't know that I ever got to 400. And I'm approaching that 400 mark now at 65. And I never really got there with the trap bar. So I know I'm stronger than I was. It's amazing where this strength is. I mean, so I don't test my strength constantly. I just try to do a reasonable number of reps, but I'm stronger. There's no question. I'm stronger than I was at 55, and definitely as strong as I was at 45 at a minimum.
Yes, that's got to feel pretty good. I can tell you, I'm 56. I'm about a decade younger than you, but I'm stronger now than I was 10 years ago. I have no doubt about it. And that's, I think that's pretty remarkable. And to see that consistently happening with a number of people, it's pretty cool to see. So the other thing that people often critical of this diet will say, hey, it's too expensive. How do you find, is it, I mean, you said you've got a neighbor, you got some bison, access to bison, you've got eggs. I mean, how does it work for you financially?
I haven't noticed an increase in costs from that. We've had more increase in costs just due to inflation than anything else. But when I sit down and I analyze it, bison isn't the cheapest meat, so that's not a comparison I can make. I didn't eat bison every day when I was eating the junk, but the food bill has not been that crazy compared to what it was. I mean, I don't think it's gone up. I think it's pretty much apples to apples, pretty much the same, and we don't notice that too much. And we eat a lot of meat, so we have to go. We go to the store once a month and buy a whole boatload of meat. Then I go to the farm and buy meat there, and another farm buy meat there, and we just we like to support our local farmers, so we try to do that when we can. There's probably a premium for that. I think we pay a little extra because of that at times, but it's worth it to us. So that's just a personal decision.
Yeah, good for you for doing that, by the way. I mean, it's good to keep those guys in business because, if they go out of business, then it's all big, giant corporations that are going to feed us, and they may not have the best, our best interest in mind, believe it or not.
Yeah.
What, as far as, it seems like, you said you eat a lot of bison, a lot of fish, so you're probably quite heavy on the protein. I mean, do you have like a protein target you're trying to hit every day?
I try to hit at least 200 grams a day. I don't measure anything or calculate anything, but I know I'm typically averaging around 230 to 240 a day. I try to keep it up in that over 200 range. I don't measure anything anymore. I used to at times. I know that the fat and protein are both pretty high because I eat the fat that's on the meat or the fats in the eggs and all that kind of stuff. So I know that that's about a 1-to-1 ratio, somewhere in that area. And then the only thing I try to keep low is the carbs, and I don't do that intentionally. I just don't have carbs because I'm not eating anything but meat. And so it comes out that way. I have played with other things, by the way. I tried the honey thing. That was the worst thing I ever tried. That was a huge mistake. But I tried it for a while. We still got a whole bunch of honey in the kitchen if anybody wants it. I mean, we got so much honey. I don't know how I ended up with so much honey, but I need to find a way to get rid of this honey. But we tried that, and it didn't work. I tried the fruit thing. I will have, when we go to my kids' house, they like to have strawberries and blueberries, and I'll usually eat a couple blueberries or a couple strawberries. I like them, but I just don't eat them regularly. They're not in the house to eat regularly. When I'm at my kids' house, they'll show up.
What was you said you tried eating honey because, some people are, there's some people are advocating that everybody needs to be eating a bunch of honey and fruit. And what was a negative that happened to you when you tried that?
It's really hard to control your urge to eat sweets when you're eating a bunch of sweets. That's all I can say. If you're eating a bunch of honey, you have a desire for more honey. And if it's not honey, then it's other things, even if you don't have them in the house, because you start thinking about them. The brain is amazing and what it can muster up if you just give it a little bit of leeway. And no matter how powerful your brain is, it can be bad if you want to start down that road.
Yeah, you said you grew up as like a chocoholic or a sweet kid that loved that stuff and couldn't stop eating it, and so fair enough.
I kept sugar, I kept sweets on my desk at work for people, and I ate them all, but I said they were for everybody else in my group. It just was a real problem for me. So for me, I'm the wrong person to start on honey because once it starts, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that there's a lot of people in your camp. I'm the same way. I just don't need that stuff. I mean, that stuff is something that, it's not a good part of my diet. So, as far as what about I'm just trying to think of some other things you might have noticed. I mean, you said your sleep was improved, your blood pressure's normalized, your blood glucose is, in a normal range. You're getting stronger, you're sleeping better. Anything, cognitively or any mood wise, any changes there?
Yeah, I think it's improved. It's a harder thing to measure, but subjectively anyway, but I definitely feel better. When I get out of bed in the mornings, I don't use an alarm clock. I wake up, I get up, come downstairs, get around, go to the gym. There's just no hesitation in my brain or my body just to do the things that need to be done. My neighbor the other day, it was really funny. I mow my neighbor's lawn for him all the time. And why do I do that? Just because I feel like I got to do something. I just have a ton of energy and I'm not working. So, I have hobbies that I'm very active in, but I just have a lot of energy, and the energy level and the mental capacity is pretty amazing. I just find it very different, especially when I'm around people that are struggling with that. I find that it's different. There's no question in my mind there's a difference. When you feed the brain the right stuff, it works better in the body.
Yeah, no doubt about that for sure. And as far as, you said you see people around you struggling. I mean, how often are you tempted to say, hey, there's an answer here? Has that ever come up?
Oh yeah, it comes up, and it's amazing to me how it's not received usually. I mean, I've talked to a number of people telling them that they could fix this or they could fix that. I don't get sunburns anymore either, by the way. I know this is a common thing you read on the internet, but I go out in the sun, I get a dark tan, which I never used to be able to do, and I never burn. So I'm at a nature hike with a bunch of people. There was probably 30 people in this little group. We're going to go out looking for particular butterflies. And I have this thing about nature and photography. So I take a lot of nature photography, and I'm really excited about going. And this lady is standing there and she says, "Oh, I forgot my sunscreen. I'm going to burn to a crisp." And I looked at her. I said, "Well, I'm not going to burn because I never burn anymore because of how I eat." And she looked at me like, "You are the craziest person I've ever met in the world." And so, people just have a hard time believing it. It's almost too good to be true sometimes.
Well, I mean, I just keep being crazy, man. I think that's, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's true.
You're showing them a way that, really can make a difference. And so, you said, you still have, I guess, a relationship with a physician, primary care physician. Does he or she have knowledge of what you're doing dietary wise, and are they on board with that, or what are the thoughts on that?
He doesn't ask and I don't tell. I mean, seriously, he will say to me, he'll say, how's it going? And I'll tell him how it's going. I tell him how great I feel, and I tell him what's going on. He'll check my numbers, and he'll say, "This is just so impressive. Keep doing what you're doing." That's what he'll say. And then we'll veer off a little bit, and I'll make some comment about what I'm doing. And it's almost like he tries not to hear it because he doesn't want to know. So I don't push on it. I say, "Okay, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing." And we go on.
Yeah, I can imagine he's with his ears going, la, 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 don't tell me. I don't want to hear.
That's exactly what it feels like. He never says that, but he doesn't, I told him one day, I'm an engineer by background, so I tend to love data. So I'll do some of my own blood tests sometimes. I'll get some test results and I'll take it in and I'll lay it on him. And he just ignores that too. I mean, he doesn't want to shake the boat. He doesn't want to upset the apple crate. He's got a steady stream of income coming from Medicare. That's what matters. And it's sad that it's that way, because I would like to engage with my doctor about my life and my health long term, but I don't think he's capable of that. I don't. He's a great guy. He probably saved my life. He's the one that found the prostate cancer. And, I owe him a lot for that, because he found it early enough that he saved my life, I'm sure. But he's not the guy that's going to help me figure out anything that's more deep and metabolic.
Yeah, I think as a physician coming from that, I think we're more in line to take care of sick people, but we're not really good at getting people healthy, to be honest. I mean, or really prevention. I don't think. I mean, I think there's some U.S. preventive task force things that we do, but I just don't think prevention is really what we learn in medical school. And this is, yep. I mean, this is what health looks like. I mean, in your 60s, getting stronger, having all the energy in the world, and you're obviously an outlier among, because if you look at, I mean, I don't know how often you get to spend times with, people you grew up with that are your age, and you can see where they are quality of life wise. And it's probably not even close. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, very fair to say. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, what about, I mean, obviously you're here sharing this, and I know you're in the community. Do you participate on social media at all?
I do. I don't say as much as I listen. I don't put as much out there, but I do. I'm on Twitter, and I like to follow the nutritional Twitter people. I comment and make some comments here and there. I'm on Instagram. I have 2 Instagram accounts. I have my Instagram account for my photography, which is where I post a lot of my pictures that I take of nature and particularly wildlife. And then I have my more carnivore related, where I'm carnivore.rick. Well, that's on Instagram. And that's where I tend to post anything I do post about carnivore on Instagram. But it's also where I read a lot and just try to keep up with what everybody's doing. And then I'm on Facebook a little bit, mostly for family and for sharing pictures again. And that's kind of, I play around other places. I've even been on Snapchat, and I've been on about every social media platform there is at some point or another, just playing around. But I'm a geek at heart.
And have you been, I mean, somebody, Charlie was commenting on your nature photography, say it's pretty impressive. And so we have to check that out at some point. But I mean, as far as on the more carnivore related accounts, I mean, has it been negative, positive? Do you get a lot of people like, I mean, some of us get attacked for just because of the way we eat, I think unnecessarily, but it certainly occurs. Do you run into any of that?
Sometimes I get myself in a little trouble. The other day I posted, Flex Wheeler, everybody may not know who Flex Wheeler is, but he's a famous bodybuilder from the 90s. He was a big guy. He's lost his legs. He's had some leg problem, one of his legs. But Flex posted on Instagram something about, I'll never remember this exactly, but he made some comment about eating some kind of bread, and it was really important that you have this bread. And I posted something, but why would I want to eat bread if I want to be healthy and stronger? So I don't remember what I wrote, but some guy responded and made some comment about, anybody that thinks they're a carnivore, blah, 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 doesn't, it was a very derogatory comment. And some other guy posted, says, well, you should go look at this guy's picture. If for 65 years old, he's pretty damn impressive. And so, it's just social media is full of people with attitude. And when you don't have to meet somebody eye to eye, you can say anything. When you can just write it down and post it on the internet, you're pretty powerful. And so I've learned just to not pay attention. You just post what you're thinking and what you're feeling and ignore the rest.
Yeah, I think Mike Tyson had some quote about something to the effect that, social media has made people comfortable saying things that if they said them in person, they get punched in the face. And it's kind of an interesting thing where you've got this anonymity and hiding behind avatars and saying things that you'd probably never say to somebody's face. It's kind of funny because I've had a lot of people that are very, very critical of what I do, and that's fine. I mean, I think that's great. That's fine. You can stand up to the criticism, but never in my life, in real life, has anyone ever said anything remotely, even slightly, near what I get online. So it's kind of funny to see that. So anyway, well, Rick, thank you for sharing your story. It's an incredible story. I'm interested to see how your progress goes with the deadlift. I hope you get that 400 pounds off the ground very soon, and you'll have to let us know how that goes. But thank you very much. And for the rest of the folks, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. We'll be back again tomorrow. You guys have a great day. Anyway, happy Monday.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now. Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to Carnivore.diet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.